Welcome to On the Table, a podcast about board games, card games, and tabletop war games. Hey, it's Chase from On the Table Gaming, and welcome back to episode 112 of the On the Table Gaming podcast. And thanks so much to our Patreon supporters for helping keep this podcast ad-free. So today I'm excited to be joined by Craig Gruenhagen, winner of the Take the Black Day 1 event at CMON's organized US Nationals event, as well as Brett Lanpher, winner of the second day, the US National Championship Tournament. So first on, Craig, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And Brett, welcome back.
Hey, always good to be here.
So you guys both must be feeling pretty good about things. You know, have you guys caught up on your sleep?
No, not at all. I ended up getting back into town at 5 a.m. and got called into work at 7.
Oh my God. All right. So you traveled a bit of a ways to get there?
A little bit, yeah.
You know, I was watching a thing about competitive chess players, and it was like grandmasters in a tournament will burn like 6,000 calories. So it's just like, that's the amount of like mental exhaustion. Brett, how are you feeling after that second day tournament?
Yeah, I definitely slept in. I went home, just spent a little bit of time with the wife and the baby, and we stayed up a little bit late, but I slept in until like 11 today. So I got caught up on sleep. I don't have it as bad as Craig, but I'm definitely feeling still some of that mental fatigue. Like I haven't even thought about picking up dice or looking into any list building or anything like that. I've had to give myself a break from it. Typically I take about a week off.
Yeah, that sounds about right. You did just put in like a vast amount of hours. So I think that's fair to say. But, so it's been a while since we've actually talked about, the results of a US National Championship event. I think the last one was in 2019 at PAX Unplugged. Obviously, that was a great one. It was a blast, and it was a great environment. It's kind of a convention setting, though. So there's like people coming over and like talking to you and asking questions during your game about like, what is this game? And like trying to touch your dice and stuff. So this year, people are obviously a little bit more hesitant about convention settings. So it worked out pretty well that this was at Family Time Games and that they were able to host this event. Craig, had you been to Family Time Games before?
Yeah, I went there last year when they did the Gen Con replacement tournament, this past spring when they did the Adepticon replacement tournament, and I believe 2 other tournaments as well.
So you're somewhat familiar with that landscape then. So what was the atmosphere like at this day 1 Take the Black event that you had so much success at?
It was actually really friendly. A lot of fun people to talk to. It was laid back in some ways in that everyone was polite, laughing, having fun, but it was also intense because no one wanted to lose. It wasn't the day 2 Nationals tournament, but people were still taking it serious.
So sometimes with events like this, there can be a little bit of like nervous energy or just that sort of tension leading into it. Like, how do you generally prepare for events like this? Do you have any like rituals or things you do leading up to an event?
Yeah, so I actually like whenever we do local events, I don't do as well because I can't do my ritual. I like the long drive. I listen to podcasts, even if I've heard it before, just to keep things fresh in my mind. I get to the hotel. I could fall asleep to the podcast, wake up the next morning, have to have steak and eggs. It has to be. If I eat anything else, I
nice.
lose.
Breakfast of champions.
So, absolutely.
And Brett, how about you? You've done a lot of tournaments as well. Is that same thing? You nice, relaxing podcast, get a full night's sleep, hearty breakfast. Is that your approach?
Yeah, it's definitely a real thing. I'm a little bit different than Craig. I listen to some podcasts. I generally go back and kind of review some notes. I theory craft like what lists I'm expecting to see. I think about recent tournament winners and what they've run, what's kind of winning right now, some things that people might bring to kind of throw you off. So just like Craig, I listen, I read, I do a little bit of research. Then I try to calm down and get some sleep the night before. And for me, it's not steak and eggs. I have to have pancakes before every event. It has to be pancakes. It's been my thing since Gen Con 2019. And I don't eat pancakes very often, so it's generally reserved for like these tournaments because I just don't eat them very often. But it's a thing. It's just what I feel like doing on those tournament days, and I haven't missed a pancake breakfast at any tournament.
Well, so now we know, all those people listening that want to take a shot at Craig and Brett, the best way to do this is to organize a tournament event somewhere where they can't get their morning rituals here, right? You got to scour the area, make sure no like pancakes or steak and eggs available. And, throw them off here, right, for the super competitive.
That would work.
It would, yeah, I think it would work. Yeah, even when I went to Gamers Haven, Bob Omer, he was a little bit annoyed. He was like, well, I was going to make breakfast. I was like, no, I have to go somewhere and I have to have pancakes. I can make you pancakes. It's not the same, Bob.
Did you demand that? Is that like your rider? You're like, I need a trailer and it needs to have pancakes. Like,
yep. Exactly. Yep.
So, Craig, on this first day, Take the Black. So, it's a kind of a competitive vibe, right? Everyone there really wants to win, people being friendly, and you roll up and you're playing Targaryens. Now, how'd you settle on playing Targaryens for your faction? Is this the faction that you've been playing for a long time? What kind of drove you to this particular force?
Yes and no, as far as playing it for a long time. I bought them when they first came out because my play style is all about speed and movement shenanigans. That's all I want to do. If I can do that, I feel fairly comfortable that I can win a game. So I was a Stark player since the game dropped, and I bought the Targaryens when they came out. I really wanted them to work in the last edition, but I couldn't quite get it. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't quite make them work to the level of Starks, so I stuck with Starks. But as soon as 1.7 or 2021 dropped, then the Starks were no longer that movement shenanigan. I mean, they still have those things, but not at the level that the Targaryens do. And that's why I switched.
So how did, the 2021 update maybe impact your list building with Targaryens? Are you running, vastly different lists here? Or is it just that, with the update, the things that you like to run or that you have been running kind of just fit a little bit better?
Yeah, I'm essentially running the same list I did before, but they just work better now.
That's fantastic. So what were you actually running then for this list? What'd you bring as your two lists?
So I brought Drogo and Flayedmen, 2 units of Outriders with no attachments, a unit of Screamers, a unit of Hackers or Hakars or however you say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Illyrio and Barristan Selmy. And I had 2 different Grey Worm lists depending on which day it was for my second list, but they were never really in consideration to be ran. So
you got a few things that you're doing interesting with that list, and I'd love. So I'm just starting to kind of experiment with Targaryens, having played mostly Free Folk. So 2 things that stand out to me here is you run Hakars or Hackers, and then you're running 2 NCUs. So maybe we'll start with the Hakars first. And how are you making those work for you well? Like, how are you incorporating those into your list?
I will say this, they died every game.
Okay.
But I will also say that on day 1 of the tournament, instead of being 4-0, I may have been 1-3 without them.
Really? Okay. So
yes.
So how are you? They're dying off. So and that's sort of just going to happen. They're kind of like a cruise missile, I guess.
Yes.
How do you utilize them? How do you find success for maybe people don't have a lot of experience with them?
Well, the first thing is it's a mind game. So most opponents that I saw this weekend had 1, maybe 2 cavalry units, right? So if you deploy your Hackers last, or put them in outflank, either one, then your opponent is going to hold that cavalry unit in reserve, at least during deployment. And then if you don't deploy the Hackers, then they have to put that cavalry unit in reserve until you drop your Hackers, which that cavalry unit is the only thing that can catch me, and it's sitting in the backfield.
Interesting. That's like a kind of like a value that's maybe not at first appearance when you look at like just the stats of the unit. You get the mind games going.
Right. And as far as actually using them in the game, if I outflank them, what I will do is I'll try to get a shot at the rear of the enemy commander if I can. Especially if I'm engaged with a different unit in these scenarios like Dance with Dragons.
Yep.
Because then they just hand me the token. And after that, I don't care what happens to the Hackers. Their panic test was -4. They hand my stronger unit the token and I score.
So you ran this list on all 3, all of the game modes that you played.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like an all-comers list for you, essentially.
Yes, it was.
Brett, now you've often sung the praises of the Hackers as well. Have you, anything you would want to add on to that or ways that you use them?
No, I think Craig's got the general idea. You don't always have to outflank them. Now you can. One big part of list building, I kind of alluded to it earlier, is doing a little bit of research. And if you use a tool like A Song of Ice and Fire Stats, or if you use the trackers that CMON's starting to put in place, you can kind of get an idea and you can start to see like, well, is cavalry in every list? Well, it's not always. Sometimes Lannisters like to run 5 infantry. Sometimes Baratheons like to run all infantry. You don't always see cavalry. So if they don't have a cavalry unit and you outflank, so let's say you outflank off of the maneuver zone. If they're an all infantry army, they have no way to turn around and face you because swift reposition for an infantry unit, when you don't control the maneuver zone, it doesn't allow you to do a maneuver. It's just a shift. watcher on the wall, you have to attack something before they could turn around to face you. So you can control that. That means they have to spend their infantry unit's activation to turn around to face you, unless they want the Harakars in their rear, which you really don't. So yes, they can just turn around and face the Harakars, and then you say, well, now you're not charging me in the rear, so that's fine. No, that's fine with me, because I am on your side of the field and you're faced to the rest of my army. So then you've got a really fast unit like the Outriders. You can potentially then shoot that unit in the rear. The Harakars don't really care about that because they're morale 4. So there's a couple of things that you can do with them. But besides that, a lot of this game hinges on tempo. It hinges on, I've got the first turn. This is what I'm doing. My cavalry unit's coming in. I've got them in position.
Coming in like a train, right?
Exactly. And then another element of the game is that it's that mobility and the ability to be where you want to be. Now, if you can take their cavalry out of the game, even if, like Craig said, it's just for 1 or 2 rounds, if you tie them up with the Harakars, they're eventually going to have to kill them. But how much have they lost in the tempo of the game when the rest of your army is circling around them because there's no cavalry to keep them in check? So that's what the Harakars are. They're a very, very good tool. They're just a tool. They have a nice attack profile. They can do damage, but you don't have to just YOLO charge the Harakars into the front of something. You use them to scare because they have that innate vicious, and their attack profile is pretty solid. It stays at 6 hitting on these. It doesn't ever diminish, and they're fast. Their movement 6. They've got the free cavalry maneuver. You can put them where you want to put them. Wait. Send them in when you need to send them in. Or, like Craig said, you sacrifice them, and that's fine. And
you're still tying up another unit, right? I mean, it's your 5-point unit might be tying up a cavalry unit of greater value. I like this idea of how it's really forcing their cav unit to now play a different game.
Yeah, and then if you think like Flademen, for example, they have 7 attack dice. They're hitting on 3s. They should score maybe 4 hits. The Harakars are a 4+ defense. They should block half of those. Now, the panic becomes a 50-50 because of intimidating presence, but if it's anything other than Flademen, even Knights of Castle Rock with their Sundering, it's going to take more attacks than you think to get rid of those Harakars because you didn't charge them. And the Harakars have the speed and the tempo to charge you. It can actually be pretty problematic. With some good dice on the Targaryen player, some weakened tokens, which can make the Harakars even more survivable, and things like this, which, by the way, Illyrio puts a weakened token if he heals a unit that's engaged. So you can actually really tie something up with those Harakars for an incredibly long time if it's weakened. Potentially the whole game, if you put those resources into the Harakars.
Now, Craig, in this list as well, you're running Mopatis and Barristan Selmy, the Advisor of the Dragon. You're running 2 NCUs there. Is that something you typically do, or what maybe motivated you to make that call? Was it just because you need to take those points and actually have them on the battlefield? Why 2? And why those 2?
In 1.6, I ran exclusively 3. But when things change, when the game modes change and I switch factions now, I actually struggle with 3. But I find that when I bring 2, if I have the right to, and my opponent brings 3, I find myself to be at a significant advantage on the battlefield, especially with all my speed. I can already pick my fight, but they're also playing with 4 or 5 less points than I am. With my list, aside from 2 cards, I don't need any zones, any particular zones for my cards or my units to be effective. So I can get away with 2 NCUs a lot easier because I can use them more as a control factor than as a I need to have the crown or I need to have the bags type of thing.
That's interesting. I guess that's a big change from, trying to remember now, my Targaryen or my Khal Drogo deck. He used to rely on the attack zone, right?
Yes.
So now it's really you've got swift reposition, and Fire and Blood as your maneuver zone cards in the tactics deck. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, actually. You really aren't beholden to them as much. And I guess
not at all.
With Targaryens, too, those extra points can give you something that's incredibly mobile, that's going to be able to get out there. I guess in this case, Outriders, to reach out and hit somebody or to be flanking and doing damage. I'll have to experiment with that. Like I said, I'm still trying to find my way through Targaryen, but I think I'll try running more 2 NCU lists and see if that makes a big difference, especially when you're going like cavalry heavy like this.
And then what Selmy does is, he blocks an effect or tactics. I anticipated to see things like the Night's Watch, stuff like that. So what he does is he allows me to bypass those effects that are really problematic for me and still get in the charge that I want or need.
For this list, are there any particular factions that you feel like it plays really well into?
Night's Watch because of Selmy, but in addition, Lannisters, who are also very popular. They have a lot of really good synergies right now. And Red Cloaks are in almost every Lannister list, at least they were this weekend. However, the entirety of the army is a 5-up morale or better. And what that does is that even, and usually I can stay away from Stormcloaks, but even if they do hit me with those panic tests, I'm only at an 8 if I haven't already knocked off a rank with Outriders. So I still have an okay chance to pass it. If they're down a rank, I'm at a 7, which is 50-50. So I can really tank a lot of their damage out and nullify it just by having such a high morale.
I know Red Cloaks can cause some trepidation in a lot of players, so that's a good way to tech against it. And, it kind of shows how you're talking about like planning your list to counter the potential meta or things that you're pretty much guaranteed to see.
Absolutely. And one more thing I'll do with the list, which might sound weird to people, but in that, the Adravat is in the deck, which if you kill a unit with the card on, it gives you an extra VP. I actually never played it the entire weekend in its intended usage. Its second effect is draw a card. I would constantly use it to cycle my deck, and I did the same thing with Lead by Example. So I constantly had 4 cards that I could just cycle out into something else, which led to me getting through my deck so much faster. I almost always had the card I needed at the time I needed it because of that.
Wow, that makes
sense. The deck tutors itself. Yeah.
Now, there are some lists that have been talked about being like particularly potent. And I know a lot of times this Night's Watch kind of builder crossbowmen list with conscripts comes up. Is that something you ended up seeing in the tournament?
I did not see it, but I was, believe it or not, secretly hoping to, because I tailored this list to counter that, although it might not be apparent on paper.
Yeah, so talk us through it, because that's what I was thinking, like, is this what this list was for? And so how does this list play out that if you did face that, it would maybe excel?
Okay, so in order to compete with that list, at least for me, I want to get you spinning. I need you facing 3 different directions, and if I do that, then I have a chance. This list is fast enough to make that happen. For example, let's say I drop Harakars behind them. Well, they'll use their captain to turn around and face me. And yeah, if I don't respond immediately, they will kill me. But that's one less 9 dice hitting on 2 shot that they're pouring into the rest of my army.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't do it until I can respond to it. So what I do is I just circle them. I don't let them get multiple shots off. I'll put Selmy on a crossbow unit and then charge them with Drogo and pop Selmy's ability so they don't shoot me on the way in. And if they do shoot me on the way in, I'm saving on 4s, which isn't so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll kill the watch captain and then I'll move on to the next target.
Yep. Now, you worried about like the conscripts? Do the Harakars try and target that? Like, do you typically try to isolate that unit first, or are you just plowing through those crossbowmen with your flayed men?
Whatever's available.
Yeah.
I try to make my opponent spin and then just pick whatever target's open. And once I get one, I can usually snowball it with overrun and stuff like that.
That's fantastic. Was there a particular matchup you had that was, particularly challenging that you were like kind of sweating through? Like, oh man, like this is really hard for my list to face.
Yes,
Starks. Okay. And how so?
They are fast. So Starks have some of the movement shenanigans. They have swift reposition, which, allows them to. So if I drop Harakars behind them, even if their cavalry isn't anywhere near there, they can just spin around and then charge me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. I try to play with this list. A good barometer of success for me is if I'm playing the majority of the game on my opponent's side of the table. If I'm doing that, I know I've got them spinning. I'm in their flanks. I'm in their rear. And they're not playing the scenario anymore. They're trying to survive. But when I faced Starks this weekend, he had Flayed Man, Holy Cav, Shaggy Dog. I played the majority of the game on my side of the table. And I ran out of room to maneuver fast. There's only so far you can back up and run. Tully Cav are incredibly problematic.
Yeah.
For my list. With that Sundering, my save drops significantly. So I'm saving on 6s. He's saving on 3s still because I don't have Sundering. They pretty much ignore the Flayed Men's intimidating presence because they've got a 5-up morale essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So they were a problem. What I ended up doing is just feeding the lions to them. and holding them in place for a couple rounds.
So it sounds like the rock cars are really kind of the all-star flex piece in your force here.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm definitely gonna have to experiment more with them. This sounds like a fascinating list. And then how did your day go here? I mean, kind of spoiler, you came out on top. How did your matches go overall?
They were pretty good. The first match was a really weird one for me, in that I was playing. It was Double Warrior Sons and Flayed Men and not Conscripts, Poor Fellows. And it was Feast for Crows. And I lined my Drogo Flayed Men right up in front of his commander, which I think was the High Sparrow. And he decided he was going to try to alpha strike me and charge me. He needed a 2-up. He rolled a 1 and landed on the token 1 inch away from Drogo, unactivated Drogo. So I charged him, killed his commander, but he passed his panic test.
Oh,
that was at -4. He actually had his Flayed Men in reserve because I had deployed the Harakars off table.
Mm-hmm.
But when I dropped him on, I was able to place him just so that no matter what he did, he couldn't fit the Flayed Men in there. Yeah, I literally dropped him right in the middle of his army, but out of line of sight of everything.
That's gonna be so frustrating. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so then I charged the rear of his unit holding the token, and that panic test was at like -5 or something like that, and he failed that. So I handed the token to Drogo, and then once I moved, he blew up my Harakars. But I just sacrificed the entire rest of my army. I just kept suicide charging so that they couldn't get to Drogo, and ended up winning that way. And that was the first time I've ever played it that way.
Yep.
Normally I spread the whole table. This whole game happened in a quarter of the table.
That's okay. No other Dothraki will turn Drogo in on that one. No one will say anything. It's like, he just spent the whole time running away. Like, come on, man.
He did too. The rest of the games were all fairly similar to each other in how they happened, in that I deployed the same. I put Outriders along each table edge, Screamers and Drogo in the middle, and then either Harakars off the table or deployed them next to Drogo for a 1-2 punch. And if they had cavalry, all the cavalry I faced was almost exclusively Flayed Men, with the exception of the Baratheons.
All that heavy cav. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, my Screamers are faster.
Yep.
And less points. So I would just suicide charge them into the Flayed Men and keep healing with Ilario, which kept putting weakened tokens on their Flayed Men. So I would eventually lose the unit, but it would take so long that all he would have left would be the Flayed Men and maybe another unit. I would try to target the commander with Drogo, but it didn't always work that way.
Well, I'm looking forward to trying this list out myself. Did you get to play on the second day as well?
Yes, I did.
So, and Brett here, I know obviously you got to play on the second day as well. Brett, what was the vibe like on the second day?
Everybody was incredibly excited. I think the premise of the first day was for everybody to kind of knock the rust off, maybe experiment with their list that they were thinking about running, just to give them a try, against who was there and that competitive kind of atmosphere. But day 2, it was like everybody was laser focused. It's not that it was unfriendly, right? Because the whole entire mood of the entire event was incredibly friendly. But
yeah,
I was making some jokes at people. I sat down next to Craig when we were filling out our list to turn into Robert, like our official lists. And I sat down next to Craig and put my arm around him. And I was like, hey, I'm filling out this list, but I don't want to fail this test. Can I copy off of yours? So there was a little bit of humor going on. And Robert and Adam were like super fun and super upbeat the whole day.
And that's Robert Fulkerson, the head of the A Song of Ice and Fire organized play team. And then Adam Lovell, who I think now is like the vice president of sales, I think, at CMON. He's been moving up today. I know when the game first came out, I think he was in a different position. He's climbed his way up the ladder.
Yes, absolutely. And it was really, really cool for him to make the trip to come to Indy. I know that he's got a personal relationship with Shane. So that was really cool that he made the trip, not just for the US Nationals, but after the event, he and Shane and Robert were having dinner in the back of the store. So just really cool to see that kind of interaction with a local store owner and some of the CMON brass, some of the higher ups in the company. But they seemed incredibly excited for the event. They were excited to see, the models for their game on the table. They were walking around to the tables, kind of making jokes at people, taking jabs at people here and there, and seeing what was going on in the game. Robert walked over when I did an orbital strike with Othel NCU on Dakota's poor red cloaks, and Robert walks over and he sees me, claim the wealth zone, and then 6 models are removed, and he's like, well, what just happened? And he's looking at the board, he sees the free attack is open, and I was like, I shot him. He's like, you don't even have archers. It's like, yeah, I shot him with awful. He was like, oh my God. He was like, where did that shot come from? I think awful shot him from the wall, man.
But the orbital cannon on the wall, just, goodbye. So what list did you run for nationals then? What were you rolling out with?
I ran a Night's Watch pairing, and interestingly enough, similar to Craig, who teched for Night's Watch, Craig and I talked a lot going into this event. And, I had been running double crossbows. I ran it to that Northern Realms Gaming #2, the energy event, and it did pretty well. But, I was talking to Craig about it. I was like, this list is really tough to play. Bob and I have kind of played it a whole bunch of times, and we think there's very few things that can beat it. And Craig was like, I beat it all the time. I was like, whoa, wait a minute now. And then he gets to telling me, and he kind of put the fear of God in me. I was like, you know what? He's right. Like, you put the Harakars behind, the first instinct is to either activate a unit of crossbows or spin the relentless order because the maneuver zone's been taken. It's, well, I'll just turn around and shoot you. And then, no, not if I put Barrist and Selmy on them. You spin your order, and then, well, I guess you could spin the order and then activate. But if he puts Selmy down on the horse and you try to spin your order to turn around, then Selmy would block it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to spend your activation to turn around. If you spend your activation to turn around, then you don't have any way to shoot them. So there's definitely some counterplay with dropping Harakars behind that list. But the scariest thing about that is that list entirely hinges on the conscripts staying alive to heal your elite units, because you're running paper thin crossbows, right? They have to be healed by the conscripts. Craig's army can get to the conscript. He doesn't even really have to care about the crossbows that much. He can put some threats in front of them, like what he's saying with the suiciding Harakars. He can send Harakars to tie you up, force you to retreat, waste your activation, make you spin the order to shoot the Harakars, and he can just go hunt conscripts. And so I was like, you know what? There's a lot of stuff that can just go hunt conscripts. And this is just a PSA, and take it for what you will, because I've said it on the Facebook page a lot, and it's always easier said than done. But the PSA for beating Night's Watch is you kill the conscripts.
Right. And you still got to execute, right? Like, but that's part of the game, right? Now, this is what's so cool is like, there's like a meta maybe that develops, and then you have people that like develop a counter to the meta.
Yeah.
And now we're going to see like other people out there are going to be like, like, how do I shut down this Harakar, 2 Outriders, Drogo Flayed Men list?
Yeah. And the answer for Night's Watch is you've got some mobility. You've got Ranger trackers. They're still a really solid support unit, but at 5+ defense, 5+ morale, and they're not very good in melee. They're not exactly the best unit to go intercept enemy cavalry. They're not exactly the best body blockers for your crossbows, a unit to stand in front of the crossbows, like, get past me. And it's like, I really want some mobility. So I did conscripts with Othel, which is pretty standard for me, and I think a lot of people with an Othel list. 1 unit of conscripts supporting and healing, 1 unit of builder crossbowmen with a Night's Watch captain, and then a unit of flayed men. And then as far as the NCUs go, generally I run this list with 2 NCUs. It's just Peter Baelish and Jayor, and that works perfectly fine with the double crossbow build. In this build, I wanted to experiment with a 3rd NCU. I very easily could have just added some watch recruiters to the conscripts and made even more healing, or I could have gone with another T support piece. Like I could have even put a 3rd ranged unit, Stormcrow archers, because I freed up 2 points by taking the flayed men. But I chose Corrin Halfhand NCU for a couple of reasons. Number 1, Corrin's new reworked ability. He did go up to 6 points, but he got some buffs as well, right? They had a look at him in the kind of the 2020 or in the 1.6 meta. And I think they said, Corrin was probably a little bit too good at 4 points. Let's bump his points up, and they gave him an addition. Corrin Halfhand can now influence a cavalry unit, and he could not do that before. Cavalry unit, he can influence flayed men as well. And optionally, you can drop him on your builder crossbowmen, allow them to march 12 to get into position, and then they'll have 1 more dice on top of the dice that the watch captain gives you, on top of the dice that honed enhancement gives you. So you can really chuck a lot of dice with these builder crossbowmen. A lot of the game, I was throwing 9 dice. 9 dice with Sundering. They're either hitting on 2s or they're hitting on 3s. If you have the money let me start over because this train came back in.
I think it's hilarious.
I'm trying to get away from it. And
it's the corn half-hand hype train, man. You're getting me pumped. The train noise is going in the background. I'm like totally feeling this.
It keeps coming back. I can't escape it. It's actually louder out in the top.
Okay, Brett, so let's just set the scene here. So Brett's at home. He's in the model trains. He's in the middle of the room, and this train's just circling around him. And
it's the corn train. But,
someone's got to make a sculpt of this. Let's put him on a train. Anyhow, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. So a lot of the game, corn, I was throwing 9 dice with the crossbows. They start with 6. Watch Captain puts them up to 7. Hone Enhancement, when you control the money bag, puts them up to 8. Corn Half Hand puts them up to 9. That is a ton of Sundering hits. That's like when you're hitting on 2s, it can be Knights of Castle Rock charge number of Sundering hits. Except for I'm not engaged with you. You have to get to me to take me out. So I was like, yeah, a 6-point NCU, it's really expensive. But of course, you always have the Corrin half-hand sacrifice as well. So this was a play that I thought, I really don't want to kill Corrin. I will if I have to, but I don't want to. I like his influence. I'm paying 6 points happily just for his influence because of the nature of the Night's Watch units. But most importantly, I wanted that unit with mobility, and I wanted that defense that the Flayed Men have, that 3+ defense. Because I'm like, if I need to intercept enemy cavalry and I can't get the jump on them, what I can do is I can move March the Flayed Men because of Athel's influence or Corrin's influence. I can move like a Dothraki, and I can just park right in front of my crossbows and block them out of a front charge. Because if I cover more than 50% of my tray, they can't align to 50%, so they can't charge me. This keeps Caldro from coming in and killing my Watch Captain. But most importantly, it keeps the crossbows kind of moving around. But the next tech piece that the Flayed Men bring is they have intimidating presence, as Craig's already alluded to. And we talked about it in the Joffrey podcast. Now, you can give your builder crossbowman vicious. So you tie something up with the Flayed Men, and then you shoot into that combat with the builder crossbowman when they have serrated enhancement. And now instead of just a -2 panic test, it's a -3. And they're taking the extra wound if they fail. Now, the downside is that your Flayed Men are susceptible to the panic test because they don't like you shooting into their combat. And it was interesting because in my final game with Cyrus, we both had Flayed Men. So I was shooting into his combat, and it's like, yeah, panic test at -3 for your Flayed Men, D3+1 if you fail. And then he's like, oh, yeah? Well, your Flayed Men are taking a -1 as well because they're engaged with my Flayed Men. It's like, oh, man, so much intimidation out here. But we both had
counter-intimidation.
Exactly. And we both had phenomenal panic dice to start the game. Neither one of us would fail. I mean, he was passing his 9s, I was passing my 7s, and we weren't doing any panic damage to each other. And it was like just a battle of tankiness until later in the game. And then Roos had enough of that. But we can get to that later. He had a very interesting Roos list, and I'm really afraid of Roos now.
Well, before we get to Roos, so, Dario Naharis, you were running him as your the Reckless Mercenary, that attachment. Now, how did he shape up in your list? It sounded like we had talked a little bit before the show that maybe that was a last minute addition. What role did he end up playing in your victory?
Okay, so yes, 3 of the 4 times I ran the Jon Snow list. Initially, I was going to run with what I would call my quote unquote safe list. It's a unit of Ranger Hunters with Jon Snow, and then it's backed up by a second unit of Ranger Hunters with the Watch Captain. That gives you the extra activation, it gives you a whole bunch more attacks, and then combined with Jon Snow's For the Watch card, you can potentially charge, retreat, no, not another charge, but you can make another attack, whether it's a ranged or a melee attack because of the Watch Captain. Or you can just be super mobile with the Watch Captain's free maneuver. I got to thinking and I was like, man, I've got 1 unit of crossbows that brings Sundering to my army. And I was like, I really think maybe Sworn Brothers aren't being played as much as they should. I think people are favoring Ranger Hunters and Builder Crossbowmen right now. It's like, but Sworn Brothers are no slouches. So I'm combing through what attachments I can put in Sworn Brothers, and I landed on Dario. And I think Dario's downside, where he takes a 1 for wounds that he or for hits that he makes, kind of scares people away from him. But I was like, you know what? I have For the Watch with John, which can be a free charge off of the swords or the maneuver zone. And then the Sworn brothers have their order that they can use after I'm engaged to give me reroll. I see no downside to running Dario in this unit because hypothetically, if I play the board right, if I play both the field board and position him correctly, and if I play the tactics board correctly, he should attack twice in a round. And he should have rerolls both times, and one of them he gets a free vulnerable token. That's a lot. Sundering, critical blow, precision hits that an enemy's taking. I'm not sure that there's much in the game that can stand up to those 2 hits. And that's exactly what ended up happening. I mean, I figured it would be good, but I was amazed at just how good it was. Like, Dario was just blowing everything up. He took a few wounds for the cause, but he just was vaporizing. I mean, it's critical blow, sundering, and precision with the Sworn Brothers 7 attack dice, and you can make that 8 with Sword in the Darkness. It's just crazy amounts of damage that he puts out. And I literally changed it the night before. I was sitting at the table with Dakota. I had my Rangers literally packed up, and I was like, you know what? I'm running Dario. I don't care. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. You don't get the same flexibility as you do with the Watch Captain, but I'm just going to do it. The worst that can happen is I lose, right? I'm like, come on, Dakota, help me find Dario. So we went up into the hobby room and
you dug him out. So was he also an inspiration partially for your dress for the day? Because I saw there was some pictures there and you were going suns out, guns out, and sandals here. Was that a Dario thing or going some Sunday slaughter? What was the inspiration there?
A little bit of Sunday slaughter and some Dario. Yeah, maybe a little bit of Dario.
And Craig, were you inspired or anything? Are you going to start going no sleeves for tournament events?
I might have to. It worked for him.
I think that's the current meta. I'm just putting it out there. It seems to be. I thought it was like colder where you guys are. I feel like, are you people, the kind of people that wear like, shorts and stuff all year round?
I 100% wear shorts until it has to get below 0 for me to wear anything but shorts. That's a real thing. Oftentimes it's t-shirts and tank tops too, until it gets below 0. It has to be incredibly cold for me to wear jackets or pants.
So maybe starting with Craig. So, as the day goes on and you're playing in tournament events, do you feel that like pressure building after you like win a match and then you're going to the next table and it's like, oh no, man, I won this one. And then like, as things escalate, do you like feel that pressure as you're playing? Or are you the kind of people that like when you start playing, you're kind of just fully absorbed in the match?
Both. I feel the pressure in between the games.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
Usually, I'm only running 7 activations and I'm running really fast lists. So my games usually don't last the full time one way or another. So I usually have extra time between games to sit there and stew. Who am I playing next? Who's it going to be? However, I had a new experience this past weekend in that I ran into Mod yesterday morning.
Geez.
And I actually, and not to take anything away from him, he's a great player and he won. So I'm not going to take anything away from him, but I had him. I had all 3 of his dragons isolated by themselves. I had 2 of them almost dead. All of them were engaged. And I do a flank charge with Sundering with the Harakars. On one of them, he only had 2 wounds left. And with rerolls, I only get 3 hits. He needs 6 to save. He saves 2 out of 3.
Oh.
Survives. If he doesn't make that roll, I now have an unengaged and unactivated unit behind his other almost dead dragon. So I should have been able to wipe that dragon. And then I've got 5 cavalry units on the table versus pikemen and 1 dragon at the end of round 2. However, I whiffed on the charge. And the game ended up going the other way. I couldn't recover from that.
And that's the dice gods, right?
Yes. So after losing round 1, which is not to toot my own horn, but it's kind of new to me. I actually felt more pressure than if I had won because I'm like, okay, I won yesterday and I back it up by coming out and losing. So I don't want to invalidate what I did yesterday. So I actually felt more pressure to win, but not only to win, to climb back up the rankings, but I felt like I can't just win because I won't score enough points. I have to table people at this point. So I actually felt more pressure.
Then you're really,
after losing.
Yeah. Oh, so you kind of felt like you're kind of painted into a corner there.
Absolutely.
Brett, how about you? Are you kind of, as the day goes on, does that pressure build or are you kind of absorbed in your individual matches?
It's actually funny that you ask because as I've mentioned, I don't know if I've told you on the podcast or just told you via PMs, but I'm like an honorary member of the Gamers Haven crew. So I have this live chat going with Wildcard Carl, Dakota, Chris Tran, and Bob Omer. And these guys will verify what I'm telling you. I am such like a hypochondriac about games. Like any match that I'm playing, like if you talk to me, like if you catch me outside, like how do you feel about your match? Every single match, it's my worst possible match. Like, I'm so screwed this game. What am I going to do? He has stuff. And they're like, okay, so I'm like, oh no, like I'm totally screwed.
I do the same thing.
My first game, I drew Targaryens. I played Chad Wallace, and I was like, oh my God. It's like I literally sat and helped Chad make these lists. I don't want to play this. Like I knew that he was running Grey Worm Commander with Danny the Unburnt and a dragon. And I was like, yeah. So I tipped him off to the potential triple tap with a dragon, and now I have to play it. And of course, going into the game, he pulled the combo. He rear charged me with a dragon. He had issue commands. He attacked me again. He had Danny the Unburnt. He attacked me again. The only mistake Chad made was he had an opportunity to go destroy the conscripts with the dragon. He killed one unit, and instead of going and cutting off the lifeline of the army and killing the second conscript, he went right into Dario, but I had the ability to heal him back after the dragon attacks. So I was very, very, very fortunate as well that his D3 showed a 1 every time the dragon attacked. So I was able to heal Dario up enough to have an impact on the dragon, but it was pretty scary. And then the next round, after kind of dodging a bullet with Chad, I ended up playing Chris Blum, who was playing MOD, and it was Here We Stand. And I think I told Craig too. I was like, I lost. I was like, there's no way I can beat dragons in Here We Stand. There's just no way. They come back to life. He can be in any board quarter that he wants to be. But the Dario thing happened. It's just incredible. Like I hit him once. He played Fire Made Flesh, kept the dragon alive. The top of the round, I get the re-rolls and the vulnerable token. So I popped a dragon very early. And then from there, John was able to take out a dragon. And then, of course, they kept coming back to life. But at that point, I had the liberty to spread my army out because he had a dragon that was dead. I spread the army out and I started claiming the board quarters. So I played a little aggression. I killed 2 dragons total. And then after that, I pretty much just played the mission to close the game out. But I was pretty fortunate there. So third match was Dakota, the Joffrey list. And,
fantastic.
Yeah. And so he
is
knew.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing though when you play into a list where you're like, I've thought about this particular list a lot. I feel like maybe that's a little pressure on Dakota now, being like, oh no, I got to run this into Brett.
Well, he and I both knew it came down to one charge. So in case you're not getting it, the general consensus of this conversation is that my games, sometimes the scores don't reflect what really happened inside of a game. Mm-hmm. But now I'm reinforcing that by telling you the scores don't reflect what happened in the game. Dakota got an opportunity. I put Dario out because Dakota was kind of defensive and it was Fire and Blood. So he was playing defensively so that he could throw victory points. And then he was just going to come in with the Flayed Men and finish a unit off. He was going to panic me with Red Cloaks, send the Flayed Men in, get a kill. So I had to aggressively come after him. And I put Dario up, and I knew the Flayed Men were coming. I was like, it's going to be fine. I have Shield of the Realms of Men. I have Fire that Burns Against the Cold. I should survive this hit. Even if he has I Am the King, there's no way he has 2 counterplots. So Dakota charges, and he's like, we're going to decide the game right here. I was like, okay. He rolled a 1. And I felt so terrible because he had in his hand, he had You Will Obey Me. He had both counterplots. So assuming that he doesn't fluff the counterplot rolls, I have no Shield of the Realms of Men to bolster my defense. And I have no Fire that Burns to help me against that panic test. And the Flayed Men were actually in my flank because I kind of took a gamble and offered him my flank to get him to come in because I had those 2 defensive cards and I was banking on him not having 2 counterplots. So like I keep telling Dakota, it was the one heard round the world because that disorderly charge not only stopped him from playing You Will Obey Me, it actually stops him from counterplotting as well. So essentially his Flayed Men bounced off of me because of those 2 cards that I had that he could have counterplotted. So it was really, really unfortunate, but we even mucked it, like a fake roll. I was like, well, after we resolve this, let's just see what would have happened if you'd rolled anything but a 1. And of course,
oh, no, that almost makes it worse when you're like, this could have been a real possibility. Like,
we had to know. And of course, the flayed men literally just one-shotted the Sworn brothers. I died. He counterplotted shield, counterplotted. I failed my panic test. It was over. They died.
Next time you're preparing for an event and Dakota's at your place the night before, he's not going to help you find your Dario Naharis. Then when you're like, where is it? He's going to be like, I remember that.
He's like, I'm not helping you find it. Go to bed. You don't.
No, that's not Dakota. Dakota, of course, no.
You don't need Dario. You don't need any tech pieces. Just run that list you found on the internet. You'll be fine.
So, obviously, you guys had a lot of success. I can tell by your energy that this is a lot of fun. Are you guys like jazzed to play more A Song of Ice and Fire going forward? How are you feeling about the general state of the game? Craig, how about you first?
Yeah, I'm actually really happy with it. I'm starting to adjust to 1.7 now. There's still some things I missed from before, but I do like the new version of the game. All the stuff coming out looks amazing. There's rumors that there's a lot more stuff that's going to be coming, but I don't know. And I think that once this COVID thing is passed, that the game is going to explode again. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're already seeing, the game is definitely on the rise, and we're seeing a lot more content creators jump on board. I don't know if you guys saw, but Scott, the Miniature Maniac, put out a video about how A Song of Ice and Fire is his favorite game right now. And that was really cool. So I think, as we start to claw back, I know some places are back to normal. I know some places are still struggling with a lot of the COVID issues. I think this is going to be a good, maybe I say year, that goes to January, but the next 12, 16 months, I think might be really strong for this game. Brett, how are you feeling about things? You got to walk away with a hammer, right? So how are you feeling about A Song of Ice and Fire, the general state of the game at this point?
Well, technically, the hammer is going to hang up at Family Time Games because we're working on this league. We got 3 new league players this weekend. We got some local guys to turn up and commit to the league. So I'm super excited about building that indie league again and representing indie in bigger numbers at tournaments moving forward. So that little bit is very exciting to me. But in person, A Song of Ice and Fire has inspired me so much. And of course, my friends at Gamers Haven, chatting with them every day. And I'm going to kind of formally drop this as a bomb for people who don't know. Gamers Haven, I think at least Carl, Dakota, Bob, and I are going to LVO.
Nice.
So I'm super excited because I've missed it the other times. I believe it had already happened when I started in 2019. It didn't happen in 2020, or maybe it did, but I couldn't get out there. But 2021 LVO, we are coming. We're showing up. We're gonna do the thing. I don't know what I'm gonna play. I get in trouble with the community when I promise to run something and then change my mind at the last minute. I would really like to do something. Not Night's Watch, not Lannister. I'll say that.
Well,
I would like to.
I could suggest a faction, but I think people might know what I suggest. Craig, what are your thoughts on Free Folk, incidentally?
Actually, locally here, they haven't been played yet in 1.7, or at least no one I've played.
You know what you could do? You could be a trailblazer. And you can start playing Free Folk. And what a great switch from, your super fast mobile targs. And, Brett, I think it's inspiring hearing Craig. I could hear him at least there thinking about that, entertaining an idea. Craig's thinking about Free Folk. Brett, maybe LVO's got to be a Free Folk time here. I don't know.
I think so, Brett.
Yeah, right. This is how we vote on it right now. I mean, we could, but
I'm doing it.
You don't have to make any predictions, though.
Write it down. Write it down. Everybody who's listening to Chase, write it down. I am taking Free Folk to LVO 2021.
Oh, all right. Well then, oh, man, I can't believe it's that easy. No, I just got to get what if I just one-on-one every person in the community? Hey, listen, man, I'm here to talk to you about Free Folk. Let's I'm excited to see what you do with it. And if you change your mind, don't worry. We'll still love you. You can.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
I love it. I love it.
Can I introduce you to our Lord and Savior, the Lord of Bones?
Oh, I mean, I can see you liking him. You're talking about all the those panic effects. What was it? Inspiring? Not inspiring presence.
Intimidating presence.
Of that. Intimidating presence. To me, it's inspiring, but intimidating to others, perhaps. Yes. Lord of Bones. All right, this is it. Okay, well, now I'm jazzed here. Well, and I'm glad to hear that you guys had so much fun. It sounded like an amazing event. And, there are probably some people listening to this who don't have the opportunity or maybe have been hesitant about attending events. Safety aside, sometimes they can be intimidating to jump in on. And I love how for this event and for CMON Organized Play here, they had kind of the day one event and then they had the national event. If someone was, thinking about jumping in and giving a tournament a shot, and maybe they don't have a lot of experience with that, any advice you might give them?
I mean, honestly, you have to give the benefit of doubt that everybody in this community is in this game to have fun. And I haven't met a single person in any of the travels that I've made, any of the guys that have come from other communities and come to Indy. There's been no incident where somebody was there to do anything but have fun. Every single person that I've played with, seen, been to an event with was great. So you got to get kind of to get over that hump. You have to go back to those roots and remember, hey, everybody's here to have fun. Only one person gets to win the event. Obviously, everybody wants to win, right? It gets into my head too. But at the end of the day, just don't be nervous. Just show up, play, have fun, show your abilities. Maybe you'll pick up something new from somebody else. Maybe you'll teach somebody something new. But just go out and have fun. Just go out and have fun, meet some different people from other communities, and just roll some dice.
All right, Craig, I feel bad now. If you go second here, that Brett hit a lot of the big things in the head. Are you gonna take a contrarian position, be like, no fun, like there is only driving your enemies before them?
That is kind of how I play.
More lions, that's what it takes.
Yes, but no, I agree with him. I've never been to an event that was unpleasant. I haven't run into unpleasant people. In other games, sometimes you see that where people are a little bit too much into winning at all costs. But this is a really fun community, so it doesn't matter if you're 0-4, 4-0. You're gonna have fun. It's worth it.
So with that being said, we'll maybe start to wrap things up here. Any shout outs you guys want to give? Any friends at home or local stores or things like that?
So Robert, on his way out of the Nationals 2021, Robert mentioned that. So Sean and I tried to secure a booth and a spot at Gen Con 2021 to play A Song of Ice and Fire. He and I actually, and more so him, kind of reached out on a more personal level and put up some money and things like this to reserve the spot. Unfortunately, with some of the things that have been going on with the Indianapolis, their way of dealing with COVID right now, they wouldn't give us a solid answer. So we kind of had to back out of it because we didn't really get the spot reserved because of generally, I guess the idea is they're just not sure what they're going to do at Gen Con. So Robert had asked us about that, and then he decided to go ahead and sponsor Gen Con 2021 at Shane's store. So Shane's store was already a pop-up Gen Con. So on Saturday, he's expecting a lot of traffic from the Gen Con goers. But Shane is actually working out the details now and expect an announcement by the end of tonight or tomorrow at the latest for what day we're going to do Gen Con. But there is a Gen Con event at Shane's place. It is sponsored by CMON, and you can expect the same prizes and generosity that he's shown for the Nationals 2021. And then the other shout out, that UKGT is coming up really soon. So you'll definitely, if you're interested in the competitive community and another tournament that's going on that's pretty big, you'll want to follow along the UKGT, support your favorite house, your favorite player. Definitely, it's a bigger event, so it's really cool to see what the guys overseas are doing as well.
And Craig, how about you?
Well, first I got to thank my mom. No, I'm kidding.
My superior genetics.
No, I want to thank CMON and the guys they had there. It was a really fun event. And then Shane for allowing them to host it in his building. And then another one is Chris Tran from Sunday Slaughter. He's always there filming and stuff like that. He's a great opponent, and he always puts out really good battle reports. And
absolutely.
Not only is he trying to compete, he's also trying to film other people's games and battle reports. So he's such a big part of the community. So I just want to shout that out too.
Absolutely. Such a good dude. I know he's given me some camera tip advice as well and supported us through Patreon. Big fan, love his content. I think he's got probably some of the best footage out there. His videos are fantastic. And, I think that kind of speaks to the community that we have, right? I think as far as communities out there, I know Sony West might be smallish compared to some other systems out there, but I think we got the best community. So here's to that. And I'm excited to see where things go from here. And I'm glad that Nationals was such a huge success. And, here's the more CMON organized play. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. And thanks to everyone who's listening. And in the meantime, I hope you get your miniatures on the table.